Okay, today we're taking on the muscles of the torso. That'll be front, back, and side. Okay, we're going to start with the back here. We're going to take on the muscles of the back, which may be the most complex part of the body to draw because there are so many layers of muscles. And in fact, there are 4 groups of layers of what are called the deep muscles. And the deepest group is called the deepest muscles. And then there's the deep group, then there's the intermediate group, and then there's the superficial group. And then that's still before we get to the muscles that we see on the surface of the body. So I'm going to kind of, because the deepest and the deep groups aren't going to be so evident on the surface, I'm just going to start at the intermediate level, which is part of what's called the intrinsic muscles. Okay? So we're going to go over here and take on the Erector Spinae, which are the major muscles of the back. They're the ones that are going to keep you erect. So when they tighten up, they do this. And in the neck, they'll even pull your head back like that. Okay, so they account for most, the major movements of the back. And there's 3 of these, but we'll kind of consider them as a group, but I want to draw them out individually. And even you could subdivide those, but for now what we want to do is just take on this group of 3 of the Erector Spinae. So the first one is called the Spinalis. And why I'm picking that one first is it's the most central to the spine. And so remember the spinous processes that are right in the middle, the ones that stick out, right? The one you can feel here on your 7th cervical. These are the ones that the spinalis is going to attach to. So what we want to do here is we want to take on, there's sort of 2 groups. There's one group of the spinalis that's going to be up here, very deep here, and they're not so well formed, but they run from the 2nd cervical all the way down to the 1st thoracic. What we're going to do is take on the sort of group, this middle group here. Okay? And so we want to come down to about the 2nd lumbar. So after we have our 12 ribs, remember 10 come around and are attached to the front. We have a couple of free floaters here, 11 and 12. But in your lumbar vertebrae, ones without ribs, there's 5 of those guys there. So the 2nd one up, you want to sort of bring it up like this and just run it along the spine here. So this is most central to the, again, these are going to start to get lost underneath what we've done up above. We're going to come up like this. So it's all the way from the 2nd lumbar all the way up to the 2nd cervical, or the spinalis. As these come up, they're going to miss a couple in the thoracic, a couple of the cervicals, but basically they tie into almost everything going up there. The 2nd group of muscles, the lumbar, are very interesting because they hook along this whole medial edge of the iliac crest. They come down into the sacrum. They hook all along the sacrum and they come back up here. So that's kind of an attachment point. Then they're going to tie in to the outside edges, right? So we have the spinous processes and the transverse processes. So they're going to tie into a bunch of these, and they're also going to start to tie in to the ribs as we go up. Okay? So what we want to do is come along this whole edge here, and then we're going to kind of go up like this. And we're tying in on both sides, and we're coming down along the crest of the ilium into the sacrum here. Up along the crest of the ilium, and then we want to go up like this. Now, how far do we go? This longissimus muscle is so long then it goes all the way up, and yet it's going to be underneath here, but it's going to hook into the mastoid process. So it takes on every vertebrae of your spine except the first cervical, the atlas. Everything else it's tied into. Okay? So yeah, the more belly of the muscle in here, okay, hooking all the way in down to the bottom here, through your lumbars, across the sacrum, okay, along the iliac crest. All right, and the third part of the Erector Spinae are the Ilioplastalis. So we're working our way out from the spine. So these are the widest. So they're going to actually connect along the top here of the ilium, the iliac crest. And they're going to go all the way up to the fourth cervical. So if you sort of want to count down to the fourth, but they're going to come up and they're going to swing. Again, they're sort of like a strap again. These are all sort of strap muscles. But they're going to come along here. We talked about the angle of the ribs, sort of a line that would divide the side from the back plane. So we want to stay inside of that, but we're running these guys all the way up here to the fourth cervical. So we have the bellies of all of these muscles. Spinalis in here. Okay. Then we have longissimus, belly of the muscle here, belly of the muscle here. And then we have ilioplastalis coming down here. So what that starts to create there, you might kind of see that is kind of almost like this triangle shape. And what that's really going to convey is how long or how short a muscle you are. So this diamond or triangle shape can be longer or shorter there. But all of these muscles are coming up. So ilioplastalis, longissimus, and did I say ilioplastalis? The ilioplastalis is on the outside. Spinalis is on the inside. So we've got the spinalis coming up. And then that's all going to come along here. They all kind of merge in this, it's called the thoracolumbar fascia that's going to come down here alongside the medial edge of the iliac crest and the lateral side of the sacrum. Okay? Again, if you could kind of get the feeling of the convexness of these bellies of these muscles there, that would be really good. What that would look like from the side view is the longissimus dorsi, right, that goes all the way down to the end of the sacrum. That's where we would start here. And it would go, follow that medial edge of the crest of the ilium, and we're talking about inserting ourselves in the transverse, so on the side here, processes, and on the spinous processes here. Okay, and so we're lumbar, and then we're going along the spine here, coming up. All right, and in the case of longissimus, we're running all the way up underneath here to the mastoid process. So we're talking about the strong muscles, the cords, the strong cords of the back, the Erector Spinae. Remember the innermost one, the spinalis, right? The spinous process is here, that it's running along all the way up to C2, okay, coming down through here. Then we've got the Longissimus Dorse, which is along this crest of the ilium here, coming down through the sacrum. So it's branching out, it's hooking on the sides here, these transverse processes coming up, okay? So a little wider out, coming into the ribs, and ultimately weaving itself into every vertebrae but the atlas, but also hooking into the mastoid processes, okay? So it kind of creates a really nice shape there. And then the Ilioplastalis is wider to that, okay? Ilium, right? So hooking along the iliac crest here, even wider yet, not quite outside of the angle of ribs, but tying itself into the angle of ribs, coming all the way up, all the way through the fourth cervical. And that's the Erector Spinae. I'll show you on here. Here's some of that fascia, but you can really see that sort of angled shape, that diamond shape of the tendinous and then the muscular masses. Now again, we're not seeing the Erector Spinae here, but we're seeing their influence on the surface of the body here, okay? All right, so it's a nice contour. You can think about the contour of the gluteal muscles. Then we have the Erector Spinae, and then we go into the Latissimus Dorsi and up into the scapulas there. Okay, now we're going to talk about the most superficial layer, that topmost layer of the deep layers of the back. And so these are called the spinal transversal group, or there are two splenius muscles, or the Splenii group. The topmost one we've already talked about, the Splenius Capitus. Remember, it came around from behind the nuchal crest, or the mastoid process along the nuchal ridge here, and overlapped a little bit with our semispinalis. And it came down, and it went down from the 7th cervical, attaching to the 3rd thoracic. So from the 3rd thoracic down to the 6th here, and coming up alongside and often indistinguishable from the Splenius Capitus is the Splenius cervicis. And it's going to come up and it's going to hook into the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st cervical vertebrae. Same thing over here. So from T3 to T6. And then these are hooking into the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, on the outside ends here, the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae. Splenius cervicis. Okay, we're going to move one more layer up now in terms of the muscles of the back. So we're getting near the surface. We're going from what are called the intrinsic muscles to the extrinsic muscles. And we have two sets of those muscles that help us breathe. They attach to the ribs and the middle of the spine, and they help pull the ribs up and down. And the serratus posterior superior are the ones that will be up here, but we're going to cover them with something else in just a moment. And then we have the posterior, the serratus posterior inferior muscles down here. So let's draw those in real quick, and then we'll move on to the rhomboids. All right, so what those will look like is we want to hook on to the 9th, 10th, and then the free floaters, the 11th and 12th ribs, okay? And so from the 9th rib, we'll come down and we'll hook on to the 11th thoracic, so something like that. And then the 10th rib to the 12th thoracic. And then the 1st lumbar to the 11th rib, and the 2nd lumbar to the 12th rib. So that's kind of the angles here. So up to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th ribs. Serratus posterior, inferior. Okay, the serratus posterior inferior, hooking on the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th ribs on both sides here, coming down onto the spine. Onto the spinous process is right in the middle there. The rhomboids up here are going to cover the posterior superior serratus muscles. And where the rhomboids sit, again, directly on top, they're going to continue this connection along the medial edge of the scapula. Remember, up here above the spine, we have the levators that pull scapulae, which pull the shoulder blades up. Then what we want to do is right here with the 7th cervical and the 1st thoracic, we want to take right kind of here, right where the spine of the scapula, right along that edge right there. So up to C7 and T1. We're going to have the minor rhomboids. I'll erase that in a second. And then from the 2nd thoracic down to the 5th thoracic, we're going to hook the major rhomboid all along this medial edge of the scapula. So it's going to go like this. And then to clean that up a little bit now. All right, so right down the middle of the spine here, we want to take these rhomboids, the minor, off the spine of the scapula, and then the major sitting there below. And this would be called, rhomboids. Right along here, right along here, right, and so the direction of the muscle fibers there we go, rhomboids. And you can really feel those if you just pull your shoulder blades back, that kind of bunch between the shoulder blades, that's the rhomboids. Right here we can see the rhomboids coming up along that medial edge of the scapula. Here's the levator, here's the minor, a little bit of a line indicating the difference between minor and major rhomboid. And then down here is the serratus posterior inferior. All right, we just drew the rhomboids. So they were attaching from the spine of the scapula on down this whole medial edge, okay, from C7 through the 5th thoracic, coming up on both sides, attaching on that inside edge. We have the levators attaching above here. And then in this sort of landing here, this shelf with the spine of the scapula up to the top here, we're going to put the supraspinatus, which will come over and attach on the tubercle at the top of the shoulder here. In fact, not only does it help you move your arm, it helps keep the arm in the shallow socket there, the glenoid cavity for the humerus. Then we're going to go after a group of muscles that hook on to the back here a little bit, the infraspinatus and Teres Minor. You might see this little ridge right here. That's where Teres Major is going to come around and hook onto the front of the arm. But all of these muscles on the shoulder blade now are part of the shoulder girdle and will hook onto the humerus here. Okay, supraspinatus, sitting up here above the spine of the shoulder blade. So we're going to just basically fill in that whole area here. The muscle is going to come along that medial edge, fill in all of this here, and come over and attach on the bump, right on the outside of the humerus here. The topmost portion of that little bump, the tubercle. So it's going to all sit right in there. And muscle fibers running like that. Same thing over here, right? Medial edge. Coming over and hooking on right there on the top of the arm. Supraspinatus. Okay, the next two muscles do the same thing, so we're going to consider them together. The infraspinatus, so supraspinatus, supra meaning above the spine, infra meaning below the spine. So we're going to start below the spine of the scapula, and we're going to come all the way down, and we're going to leave that edge right here where that little bit of ridge is I just showed you. And where we're going to hook on is the middle facet of that tubercle out here. Okay, and most of this is infraspinatus, something like this. And then the last little bit here is called Teres Minor. But they both do the same thing. They're both going to pull on the arm there. So we can consider those together. So we could just color them all in, if you will. Right there. All along the shoulder blade here, coming over. This will be infraspinatus. And Teres Minor. Get on that outside edge coming down. Along underneath the spine. Muscle fibers running this way. All right, and let's go after, we want to save that last little bit here for Teres Major, which is what we're going to do right now. The Teres Major is going to hook on the bottom of the scapula, and it's going to finger over to your arm too, the humerus, like this. But where it's going to insert itself is coming around on the front of the humerus there. Okay? And we can give it some volume here. That would be Teres Major. And we can draw that over here too. Okay. So that bottom portion of the scapula coming over and hooking on, coming around to the front of the arm and attaching there. Teres Major. We're leaving a little opening here where we can insert one of the heads of the tricep that's going to thread through between Teres Minor and Teres Major. All right, let's see if we can come over and take on the muscles of the shoulder blade from the side view, maybe a teeny bit on the front here. All right, so we had Supraspinatus attaching all right, we had Supraspinatus attaching on the top of this little bump right here. So coming behind the spine of the shoulder blade and filling in this area right here. The blue, the levator scapulae would be on the inside edge of the scapula, infraspinatus coming out towards us here. I'm sorry, supraspinatus. All right, next up we had Infraspinatus and Teres Minor. If you recall, they started just beneath the spine of the scapula, coming out to the glenoid cavity here, and occupying most of that scapula. And then the finger is coming down towards the back. You're right in the middle of that bump, of that tubercle. So we had the infraspinatus plus Teres Minor. All right. And just below that was Teres Major. So on that bottom portion of the scapula here, attaching all along here. And then what it's doing is it's coming up with its strap and going around to the front here of the humerus. So right behind the bone, okay, that would be Teres Major. So we might see a little bit of Teres Major, thinking about the spine of the scapula coming up here, coming around to the front right here. Teres Major would be here. First to the outside of the spine, Teres Major again. Okay, let's take a look on the back here with our scapula, spinous scapula. Here's the spine over on this side. We're going to see Teres Minor right here coming around to that medial, that middle part of the head there. Here's Teres Major going around to the front. Over here would be Teres Major, Teres Minor, and this would be Infraspinatus. Supraspinatus is gone here, and here we have the great trapezius covering that. Okay, now we're going to do the great serratus muscle, the serratus anterior. And it's going to hook on the inside of that medial edge of your scapula. So it's on this inside edge there. I can kind of get in here, show you. Right along here. And what it's going to do, it's going to finger out onto the first 8 or 9 ribs that you have. So it's going to come around right from the inside of the scapula, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 ribs. And those fingers will be quite visible from the side here then, coming maybe a little forward or middle. And what that will do is when those muscles contract, they'll pull your shoulder blade forward. So you can think about like throwing a punch, right? This is a great muscle that boxers will develop. Okay. Serratus anterior. All right, serratus anterior. Coming on that medial edge, that's that far edge, the inside edge, right along here. Each of these are going to, each finger of the serratus is going to come out and collect on attached to a rib. So we're talking from the first rib, a finger, the second rib, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 8. Sometimes 8, sometimes 9. So what that will do then is run along the ribs. Let's start up here somewhere. Because of later the influence of the latissimus muscle, dorsi, we're only going to see probably from the 5th here, from the 5th to the 9th of these guys. So I just kind of pull up, bring these around and up, tucking in there. So if you wanted to kind of fill it in, the serratus anterior. torso is coming around and hooking back here. So we would see that same influence from the front, right? So again, where we will be mostly concerned is the 5th through the 9th, but we'll see the serratus fingers coming around. Oops, got off there. All right, so maybe if I just throw those in real quick. Coming around and hooking on that. These would be coming up at a little bit of an angle, hooking on that inside medial edge of the scapula. There. Again, what we would see on the back view here . Serratus Anterior, again, following this side of the shoulder blade on the inside of the scapula. These fingers are going to be coming around. All the way down to the 9th. Working our way up there. You can see that it's coming up here. Here's all the fingers going onto the ribs, 9th on up. And you can see how what we're seeing here is the fingers are coming to the inside of the scapula there. Okay? So underneath the shoulder blade, to be able to pull it forward. Okay, serratus anterior. All right, let's take on the widest muscle of the body. I guess if you hang around a gym, they'll call it the lats, the Latissimus Dorsi. And it runs over a good portion of the back. Maybe we'll start back here, but we'll take it from all three views. The lat runs from the 6th thoracic vertebrae, so halfway down your rib cage here. It's going to insert all the way down to the 12th. And really, if you remember our Erector Spinae here, the strong cords of the back, there's this sort of fascia that ties into two, the thoracolumbar fascia. And it's going to run down all the way into the sacrum. Okay, up to the 6th thoracic. And then it's going to attach really along just to the inside of the high point of the ilium here. And if we want to sort of not be so definite about this aponeurosis here, we could just kind of take this back up to the 12th thoracic. Maybe I'll do, why don't I do one side here? That way we can kind of see what we've done underneath too. Okay, so let's continue the journey of the lat. So along the spine, over to the ilium. As it comes out here, off the ilium, it's going to attach 12, 11, 10, 9. It's going to attach into each of these ribs as it comes up. And then it's going to sling over from that 6th vertebrae here. It's going to have another attachment point right on the edge of the inferior angle of the scapula, right here on that bottom corner. And then all of these directions, these attachment points, are coming up just to reach right around here on the front of the arm. And it's sort of going to sling over. So this will sort of come up behind here. So let me get my eraser. So it's going to cover all of this up that we've drawn. So that is the lat. So you're going to have muscle fibers that come across like this. And then they're going to start heading down here too. But they'll start heading down here. That. Remember, it's hooking onto these ribs as it comes down. So it kind of folds over on itself. It'll come up here and hook along the front of the arm here. It's actually going to hook higher than our Teres Major. And all right, let's take it on. So where it's coming down, so it's hooking to the inside. If we're seeing sort of through to the back, of course we're going to do the abdominal muscles here and the obliques. But it would be coming up here. And then where it's slinging around here, it's coming up and hooking higher than the Teres Major. And then fingering down. So we'll see a little bit of Teres Major in front of the but the lat, this whole piece right here is called the intertubercular sulcus. And then what the lat does is it's really, with the serratus muscles, you're going back with the ribs. But as soon as you hit the lat, it's this broad plane that becomes a plane change from this direction to this direction. slinging around there. Put the teres right under it. Okay. The Latissimus Dorsi from the side view here. Again, we're going to hook on the rib cage 6 through 12 down through the lumbar into the sacrum here, that whole aponeurosis of the strong cords of the back. So we could really start down here, but where that aponeurosis, but where we're really going to feel the bottom of the lat is right here behind the high point. And as it comes up, it's going to hook in 12, 11, 10, 9, all of these ribs here, behind the fingers of the serratus. So we're going to come up here. We're going to go swing across from the 6th vertebrae. We're just going to catch that bottom edge of the scapula. And then the finger of this is going to come up onto the inside there. So all of this is going to get covered by the lat. A bit like a glove, this lat. Okay, so slinging around over here and up. That single point of insertion on the front of the arm there. Okay, so the lat is a muscle that really helps you to elevate yourself, right? To pull your arms down. That broad, wide muscle. So if you're rock climbing, right? I guess if you're doing some kind of pull-ups, it really involves your lats. All right, the lat coming down from the 6th thoracic vertebrae, all through all the ribs down here into this aponeurosis, the thoracolumbar aponeurosis, down into the sacrum, coming around, fingering into just behind the high point of the ilium here, the crest there on the hip, coming up, and those fingers running around to the, we won't see it here so much, but running around to the front of the arm here. You can really see, though, with the removable arm, the way the lat and the serratus really define two plane changes there, right? There you can see the lat coming up. All right, let's go after what is just a lovely muscle of the back, the trapezius. It's going to cover a lot of what we've drawn, but you'll see how it brings sort of a grace to the forms of the back. It's going to travel from way up here to way down here and way out here. In fact, it could be considered to sort of have three parts where it pulls you from above on the scapula, it draws the scapulas together, or below, it draws the scapula down. But when you can see this in the figure, this is really just a beautiful one to go after. So we're going to go up here on that middle part, that middle third of that nuchal ridge, that superior line there. And we have that external occipital protuberance, right, that bump right in the middle there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to come down. And then we're going to come out to the end of the shoulder, the acromion process there. Okay. So kind of flaring out with a convexness, and then definitely a convexness here. Then we're going to follow along the spine of the scapula. And kind of just before the end, we're going to cross over it here. And we're going to come down with a little bit of a flare. We're going to go to the 12th thoracic here. So we're coming down kind of like that. So if I draw that over here, what we want to do is we want to come along the spine of the scapula, cross over just a little bit, and then we're going to come down to the 12th thoracic. A little more of a graceful shape like that. So if I take that on a little bit here, maybe we'll start on this side. From the 12th thoracic, coming up, just missing that edge here, climbing along underneath the spine of the scapula a little bit, coming back over the spine of the scapula, out to where the clavicle meets scapula, chromium process, up. And what's another really wonderful thing about this muscle is right here at the 7th cervical, it's going to kind of open up a little bit. It sort of exposes that 7th cervical. That's part of the reason why you feel that. And we're in that middle third up here on that nuchal ridge. Okay, all that is trapezius. So let me color that in a little bit. So the muscle fibers really kind of run in 3 directions. Up here, they'll be drawing the scapula up, and then up the neck. That. And then this middle third here, they're more, we call it transverse, the strands of the muscle fibers. Well, they'd be pulling across like this. And then underneath, that trapezius is going to start pulling down. Okay. So that's the direction of the muscle fibers. Let me just color it in so it shows up better. Again, we want to leave that opening of the 7th cervical there. Along the spine of the scapula here. Just crossing over the edge, coming back underneath a little bit. Coming down to that 12th thoracic, the last of the trapezius. All right. So let's see what we would see on the front here with the trapezius. Mainly what we're going to see is it's going to give, it's going to make the shoulders feel strong, because we'll see the trapezius coming down from the base of the nuchal ridge there, and they're going to come out right in a convex form to the chromium process there where the clavicle meets scapula. So you can fill these in. That would be trapezius there. Now where we're going to really see it come in here is it's really going to come out, there's going to be a little bit of a hollow here, but it's going to actually come around to the front. I was just trying to show the back. So it's coming around to the front now. It's going to follow along the clavicle, maybe that outer third of the clavicle there, okay? But it's actually going around the shoulder from the back to the front and attaching there. So that would be trapezius. All right. And then from the back view, or side view, okay, from the side view, we're going to follow from the external occipital protuberance around that nuchal ridge about a third of the way. So we'd catch a little bit of that there. Right, that's going to come down. Now what's going to be interesting here is it's going to come around. What we're trying to do over here is, like this first so you can see it. We want to come down about a third of the way across the clavicle here. So kind of like that. All along the clavicle, along the spine of the scapula. And all of that's going to be covered except maybe the seventh cervical is just exposed a little bit there. And then we're going to have this under the spine of the scapula come out again a little bit like that. And then it's going to make a beautiful line down to the 12th thoracic. So let me see if I can just clean that up a little bit. Color it in. Trapezius. Okay, pectoralis major and minor, the muscles of the chest. To build a broad platform to rest the pectoralis major on, we need to lay in the structure underneath in the pectoralis minor. We have a couple of bumps here on the inside of the back of the scapulas that we drew called the coracoid processes. That's an attachment point where we can come down. Here we have first, second, we can come down to the third, the fourth, and the fifth ribs. Third, fourth, fifth ribs. And that will be the pectoralis minor. Kind of right in there like that. Then I can just draw it in again. Pectoralis minor. Now we're going to be covering this muscle up in a second. But what it really does is it creates the platform again for the pectoralis major to rest on. So it would attach along the ribs here. Pectoralis minor. All right, real quickly, before we do that, coracoid process inside of here, 1, 2, coming down. It would do this sort of thing, third, 4th, and fingering down to the 5th rib. Yeah, we'll cover this up, but just so you can kind of see it there. So we had the lat attachment point here, and then Teres Major. When we bring the finger over here, we're going to come over beneath that. And that would be the first finger of Pectoralis Major. After that, all the other fingers sort of go underneath and behind. Again, the first finger coming off of the clavicle. Now let's just there. So in that area, that shape there. Pectoralis Major. Okay, from the side view, again, that first finger along the clavicle coming along the front here, a little lower down. And then along the sternum here, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th or so. Okay. That would be Pectoralis Major. Just come in and kind of clean it up again. So that strap again, coming down here. From the clavicle over, then on the sternum. Each of these kind of tucking underneath. That way, the arm can unfold itself if you sort of think about lifting the arm up, raising your arm up. Pectoralis Major. Rectus Abdominis. We're going to find the skeletal attachment points, and then we'll go after it. So 5th, 6th, and 7th, where we have that cartilage that's shared here along the rib cage, that's really the attachment point. These are muscles that work in tandem with, or in balance with, if you will, the Erector Spinae, right where you were doing this kind of thing backwards. Rectus Abdominis is this, so it keeps you upright and in balance. The Rectus Abdominis is going to come down the middle line of the figure. This is known as the linea alba. If you were looking for a fleshy landmark, maybe the top of the hips here is kind of a belly button height. Okay. Linea alba down to pubic symphysis at that lower point of the pelvic triangle. And then we're just going to kind of come up with that out of there And we're going to have the
Rectus Abdominis.
come up like that. And up this way. Okay. And you can have a few lines here if you like. Rectus Abdominis. So on the side view here, what that would look like, again, the attachment points, 5th, 6th, 7th, ribs coming down here, right? That's part of the skeleton. The other part we need to get to coming down here in the front pelvic triangle, pubic symphysis. So you're going to come off the ribs, boom, boom, maybe something like that. Okay, and then for the outside here, follow the ribs down a little bit, and down into the pubic symphysis. All right, let's take on the obliques, which are really part of this. Well, we'll see their influence on the front of the figure. There's a side plane to it, as well as a back plane to the obliques. Now they're going to have an attachment point, and we really kind of need to feel all along the front of the pelvis here, running up along the ilium here, and coming around. So again, feeling that from the front pelvic points up and around like this. And then where we're going to attach is the 11, 12 down here, but all the way up to the 5th rib. And what the fingers of the external obliques, they run oblique to the body, so they're kind of coming down like this. And what they're going to do is each one's going to, the term is interdigitate with the serratus muscle coming around. Okay. So again, it's going to come down oblique. Here, let me. Kind of come down obliquely like that. Now it's not going to make it quite out to the Rectus Abdominis. But each of these fingers of the obliques comes down. Then when you get down, it has this kind of quality of coming down. When you get down into here, there's much more of a kind of a belly of the muscle here that will take on a bit of the front, side, and back. And then it will attach again down in here. So you can fill a lot of this in with the oblique coming around. Okay, the external obliques. Let's take this on from the front then. So again, our attachment point is going to be coming all the way around along the ilium here. We're going to have this kind of belly of the muscle right in here. And then those attachment points will be kind of coming down. Okay, really in the 5th through 9th is where we're going to see the obliques. And then coming down into here. So what happens is, if we sort of fill this in, and again, the lat would be hooking on to the backside. So what we're really taking on here is the shape of the side of the figure. And then on the back side too, these guys would be coming around. We'd have a little bit of the oblique along here and an attachment point here. Okay, so what does that mean? It really means, especially from the side view here, you can think about there's a front plane, a side plane, and a bit of a back plane to the oblique and its attachment point, and then these fingers coming down, interdigitating with the serratus muscle. Let me show you that. Okay, here's the serratus, and here's the fingers of the obliques coming down this way. Here's that kind of belly we were going after, and coming around from behind where the lat ties in. Right between rectus abdominis and the external obliques, we've got a little bit of a gap here, a thin aponeurosis, or I don't know, a furrow, tendinous furrow. Anyway, that's called the semilunar line. And this middle one here, linea alba. So on the figure here, looking at the muscles on the front of the torso, we have the shelf of Pectoralis Minor, coracoid process coming down to 3rd and 4th, 5th ribs. We have the Pectoralis Major sitting on top there of the Pectoralis Minor, first finger coming down off of the clavicle, the others coming across the chest on the sternum, each sort of wrapping underneath the other. That way you can raise your arm up if you need to. And then along this thoracic arch here, we have the rectus abdominis tying in here. Here's where we really see it. This is sort of that aponeurosis, that thin sheath covering everything. We have the oblique over here where you can see the fingers interdigitating with serratus. Right? So serratus coming down from the side here. The oblique fingers, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Here's the belly of the oblique, tied in along the ilium from the back, along the side, down the front, linea alba, and here's that semi-lunar line there. Okay. Well, I appreciate you so much following this. That really takes care of the front, side, and back view from the torso on up. Next time we'll take on pelvis and work our way down through the legs. That's the upper body there. Thanks.